Morning crew. Today we're talking mental endurance, how to train your mind to go the distance, whether you're in the gym or building your business. Let's get after it. Mornings in the lab. Yep. Good morning, lab crew. It's your boy Keith Millis here, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Mornings in the Lab with Keith and friends. Hey, you know how we get it after it here. We have explicit content ahead of you. So if you got children in the room, I would invite you to wrap those ears up. Hey, this is your heads up. Today, nation, it's all about endurance, mental endurance. Oh, yes, it is. We're not talking about pushing weights or running marathons. It's about training the mind to stay sharp and focused when the going gets tough. We're building business athletes here in the lab. If you are an athlete, hey, tune in. We help you build your business. If you're a business builder, we help you. Yes, you become an athlete. Hey, it's as simple as that. But before we dive into things, I'm going to invite you and remind you, don't forget to subscribe and drop us a comment, or Marty's going to get after me later. All of it helps us bringing you the content you love, the content we love making, and we love hearing from you. So hit those like buttons, bring us in every single morning here in the lab, and we are going to get things off here with our first segment, the Morning Loop. This is where we take a look at something big happening out in the world, something that's going to get you thinking. And this morning, I got something that's going to make you all lean into perhaps this idea of relatability. Yeah, you walk around, you're looking at a rock star or a teacher, and then you see them in the normal world, you're like, oh, they're just like, you mean they put their pants on the same way that I do? Yeah, true story. So we're going to kick into relatability here in a few moments to give you guys something to wonder, go, okay, I see. But before we jump into all that, let's bring in the crew. Let's get my tunes in my ears here. Let's bring in the crew here this morning. We got, there's the dudes there. Christina, we got Marty, we got Johnny, we got Richie, and we got Christina Flynn here. Producer Flynn showing up with us this morning as well. We got Richie, of course, here this morning. What is up, nation? How are you guys today? I got to get my tunes rolling here. How are you guys today?
I think the question is, how are you, baby? You're pulling out the guns. The bodybuilder is trying. He's displaying his hard work. Let's take a look. Put one of those babies up.
There we go.
I went up into the closet today. I was looking for a specific black shirt, Anderson, but I couldn't find it. And then I saw this shirt without sleeves on it, and I thought of you, brother. No, I wasn't in the fridge looking at the eggs. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go pull up the old Tank Top Wednesday today and throw the tank top on because I am the proverbial bodybuilder here in the group. We know.
Yes, you are.
Hey, before we go around the table, boys and girls, we have Richie Ingram joining us here today. It's been a few days. Rich, what's shaking, brother? I'm going to put you on the stage. We got my music going here. How are you, pal?
Man, I'm good, dude. I'm excited to see what Robbie brings to the table today. Yes. Guy's just a wealth of knowledge. So
Robbie Britton joining us here in the lab. So Rich, set up Robbie. You said to me last week, like, Billis, we got to get Robbie on the show. I'm like, oh, tell me why. And you're like, dude, this guy did what?
Yeah, so Robbie set the UK record for, I think he ran 277, he'll tell us 277 kilometers in 24 hours. And he showed me a video.
Take that into miles for the people that are in America.
172? Is that right, Billis?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. 170.
That's a lot of miles, baby.
Yeah, he showed me a video of when 24 hours is up, fell over, collapsed.
Yes.
And he said he stopped only for 7 minutes to take a shit. Like, that's it for 24 hours. So.
And that was a quick one at that, man. He was working.
Yeah, dude. I'm sure he had a couple, but man, could you imagine 8 on the run, Pete, while he was running? Just intense guy. But he has everything lined up from how he does his nutrition to recovery and everything. Just a wealth of knowledge, this guy.
That's awesome. Christina, how are you today, kid? What's going on today? I know you got a big day. So I got a funny note here. I got a note from Jimmy this morning saying, hey, I think we got a stranger in the lab this morning. He's like, oh, no, Christina's hair is just straight.
Fresh hair don't care. Fresh hair don't care.
That's awesome.
You know when you get, well, maybe y'all don't know. When you got long hair, when you get your hair done, for me anyways, it only stays like this for so long. So you get to rock it for a day or two, and then tomorrow it'll be back.
Yes. I suspect Johnny doesn't have that challenge, and I'm suspecting Richie doesn't have that challenge. I'm just suspecting that's probably the case here. So
these are problems that I wish that I had.
Yes, exactly. Marty, what's shaking, brother? How's going for you today? What's Marty's rocking the red Less Brunches, More Crunches shirt today, matching red Beats headphones. Oh, it's
orange. I must be getting color, but I look red to me too. It looks just like your Beats.
Red.
Yeah, it looks like the Beats. Yeah.
Either way, I like that color, brother. Red is one of my favorite colors. I shouldn't say phase one of. It's my favorite color.
I'm with you. Yeah,
good looking red.
And Marty, red's rocking on you too, brother. Looking good with the red Beats, the red shirt. How are you today, pal? What's going on?
I'm good, man. Just another day. Weather.
Another day without a name. Another day without a name, brother. You're coming around. Let's go. I love it.
Hey, no names. We don't do names here. We do
roots here. Baby. Yes, my man.
It's another day. But yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Got some training in. So yeah, that's why I was a little late with you and Christina. I was trying to eat real quick.
Oh, there you go. So team, Marty had a big appearance yesterday. I was sitting around, just not sitting around. I wasn't sitting around. Doing my shit, and I got a little alert on the old phone. I was like, oh, CMartyFit's podcasting right now. CMartyFit sat down last night, did a big show with some dude. They talked all over the world of fitness and lifestyle and culture. And Marty, how was that appearance yesterday? Looks like you guys had fun.
Yeah, it was good, man. That was Alan Roberts. So he's pretty big time, man. He pushes the narrative, man. He says what he needs to say. I'm gonna leave it at that. I was real mild on there, yeah, because I had my people watching. Yeah, I don't. He can get crazy, but no, he's a good guy. It was a great show, so I'm gonna have him come on my show too, and then I'm gonna talk to him about the lab, of course.
I invite you guys, check it out there. I think it was streaming on C Marty's channel last night, and you can go find it on the other guy's channel as well. But we got Good Time joining us here this morning. Good morning, Good Time. Good to have you here. We got Mike joining us here, Fit Presenter. Good shaking, Mike. What's back? I think we got to have hey Tina. We should have Mike back here in a couple weeks, so catch up with Mike. It's been a while. We got Derek here as well. How great was JD? Oh, wait a minute now. We're not going to go there. Okay, I'll put it back up there. I will have some fun. I watched the Master debate last night, and yeah, it was
good. The Master debate.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I enjoyed the other one. It was a little more entertaining. I thought they were just stoic, just standing there doing their thing, and it was boring. It was boring. Yeah, it was boring. They were winking at each other, smiling. I was like, "Come on, guys, let's put some fisticuffs on." But I don't know. It was whatever. Yeah, and Povang, I agree with you. Christina is a baddie. There's no absolute doubt about that. That's why she's on the show. If she wasn't a baddie, she wouldn't be on the show. It's just not going to happen here. But hey, I got something I want to talk about here in the morning loop here this morning. So I was looking through some old photographs and some old life pictures yesterday, and I had this epiphany. Christina, looking at you. Those days when you're wandering around like the supermarket and you run into an old teacher, and you see this old teacher, and you're like, wait a minute. You just gave me shit today in school. Now you actually are normal. You go to the grocery store and you're like all of us. And then you see, I grew up like rock magazines, like Metal Edge and Circus, where you only saw, I'm looking at you because we both grew up Motley Crue. You get your one semblance of news once a month, and you think that they live in this big old world, but yet they put their pants on the same way. They take shits like us, and they're just normal humans. And I find that when we put ourselves like on TV like this or in these situations, we tend to become unrelatable to humans. You're like, oh, that guy must be different. Like you look at Rich Ingram, oh, Richie must be different because he does these crazy things. Or Marty must be different because Marty does these crazy things. Or Johnny must be like this crazy human because I can't relate to Johnny. Or, oh no, Bill has made all this money. I can't relate to him. The funny thing is we all put our pants on the same way. And I have a confession that I want to share with you guys. And I've leaned around and danced around this a little bit, but I want to throw it out there for you guys because I want to continue to live my true and authentic self. And I want to continue to be relatable to all of you. And I'm suspecting my team here has relatability things too that we're always looking to make relatability around. And I'm going to throw out there today, I'm going to offer it up. Richie, Marty, Johnny, Tina, I'm going to offer up something. I like my cannabis. Yeah, true story. And I say that to you guys because I don't talk about it enough. And I bring it up there because we talk about the Business Athlete Performance Lab. We talk about athletics. We talk about performance. We talk about I don't drink. I try to not eat pizza all the time. I try to stay out of the peanut butter. But I offer up the cannabis thing, guys, because I want to be true to you guys. And I continue want to be true to you guys. And I want to continue being relatable and not hide these kinds of things that I'm like, and that's not that I'm embarrassed about it, but it's just like one of those things that's, I don't know. Do you guys judge me because I go for a run and I go and puff on an old reefer later on? If that's the case, that's fine. But I bring it up because I really want to continue moving on to relatability. And then I was having a chat with Anderson yesterday, and Anderson's, I got something I want to share with you. I'm like, oh, that's pretty freaking cool. So Johnny built a studio that he hangs out with us in. And Johnny, so we all look at John, one of the world's strongest men, one of the most successful bodybuilders, a world wrestler, and you think, I'm not relatable to that guy. And now he's going to share something with you guys, which is going to make him extremely relatable to all of you guys. John Anderson, tell everybody what you told me yesterday. So I'm like, yes, you actually are not a superhuman. You are relatable to all of us, John Anderson.
I guess anybody who knows me and has watched my social media, this won't be much of a shock. But if you're new to me, this could be. But you tell me.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
I was wondering why I was outside this morning.
I like that. So we've added a new
good cigar and a cup of coffee is one of my jams. The fact that it's 5 a.m. I don't do time. I don't do days. I just do what I want to do.
The guy doesn't do times now.
I love it.
But wakes up at 3 a.m.
I'm result driven.
Yes.
Not time driven.
Yes.
Hold up, man. Your rules are inconsistent, man. You don't do time about waking up at 3 a.m. What we talking about here, man?
That's just a standard. I have to get up that early so I can handle my shit to bring the best version of me to this show. That's just a marker of when I got to get moving. Sometimes if I'm up, if my alarm sometimes will go off once I'm already up and moving. So that alarm is just one thing that says, hey, you got to get shit going so you can be ready for this morning show.
And I want to add one thing, little off topic, but before I got on my stream yesterday, I get on Instagram, I see Johnny's live. So I'm like, let me click on it. And all I see is Johnny, every meal, I make sure I have some flesh. I burst out laughing and cut it off.
Ladies, it's a buddy of mine. He goes by Big Bob. He's got a really cool YouTube channel about Harleys. And so what he wants to do is he's big into the gym. So he wants to bring the fact that you can basically have it all, so to speak. You can have your bike, you can go out on the weekends, you can have fun, and you can still eat right and train. And so we basically did that with him, and he got in phenomenal shape. He said, dude, we got to show this. We got to talk about this to my people. I said, let's do it.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So I wanted to bring it up because our vision with Here in the Lab is to continue building a safe space and a space of relatability. And I'm suspecting that there's guys tuning into the show that are like, hold on a second here. I thought John was like a world athlete. What do you mean he smokes a cigar? Yeah, true story. So I'm offering it up and we're throwing it out there. So add another dimension to the show. Continue being your pure, unadulterated self. Don't hide. Bring it out. Share it with us. Talk about it with us. No judgment, full of grace. So if you tune into the show and you happen to see a cloud of smoke puffing from the West Coast, it might be Anderson getting up, joining our show here in the morning. I got Johnny's got something to say here.
Yeah. I just want to be real clear. So don't take this message as, okay, I'm just going to go be a screw up and drink and smoke and do drugs. Yeah. No, this is not what we're talking about here.
No.
I don't drink. I don't do drugs. Cigars is my vice, and it's a vice that I'm happy to lean into because it's something that I can stay still very, very focused, very productive. It doesn't take away from the quality of my life in any way. Obviously, people are going to argue the fact that there's smoke and there's nicotine and yada yada. Okay, I've accepted that part of what I like to do with cigars, and that's how it fits into my world.
I like that, and I'm a fan of that, and I'm a fan of the acceptance that you've had. Right, you're not 20 years old, you're not 30, you're 52 years old. You're like, you know what? I live a pretty consistent life. This is what I enjoy doing. To hell with all of you. And I say that again because we are working on creating a show. No judgment here, full of grace.
But real quick, there's no to hell with all of you. This is me. If you don't like it, just go over there.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to ask the team. I offered up my vulnerabilities, my enjoyment throughout life. Richie, Christina, Marty, not putting you guys on the spot, literally just having some fun. Anything you guys want to put out there going, you know what? I haven't really been talking about this, but
you're on the spot. He's just trying to soften that blow. You're on the spot.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a window to talk about it, but now I have the window to talk about it. So Richie, Marty, Christina, here's your window, or else I'm going to go to the accountability check-in.
I'll throw one out there.
Oh,
go ahead. Christina, take it.
Ladies first.
You go ahead.
Ladies first. Tina, you're up, kid.
I'm probably the least regimented and disciplined.
Yes, you are.
So I'm not really hiding anything. I'm still at the point where I'm working out like once a week. I'm like, I eat well. I've always ate well, but I don't have the same regime that y'all do. I was at an event last night. I had 3 drinks. But I think the point of this segment and what I love about it is that y'all are at the point where you've done all the hard work to get to this really high standard, as John says. But just because you're at this really high standard doesn't mean you're not human, and doesn't mean you don't do things that everyone in their daily life does. And I think we want to show our audience that, yes, you can get to this point, but you don't lose humanity along the way. And it wasn't a perfect road to get there.
And that's something that's really, that's such a good point, Christina, because this is an expensive habit. And I did not take this expensive habit on until my bank accounts could easily support this habit. So it wasn't like this was something that was plaguing my ability. I wasn't buying cigars rather than paying my electric bill.
That's a good point.
What kind of cigar is it? That's what I want to know.
I'm a Cuba Grande. The problem is the cigars I like are like, if you buy them in bulk, you can get them down to $8-10 a stick, but it can be an expensive habit if you're knocking off a couple of these things a day, if you're still coming up.
Damn, you smoking 2 a day?
Brother, sometimes I'll go out to the lake. I might smoke 3 or 4.
Fuck, I would fall over.
John?
Dude, what's up? Oh, you said you like that? Yeah, dude. So this is crazy. So I don't drink. So I have this thing with sodas, sugar-free sodas. That's another small vice, if you want to call it. So I get these
too.
Well, so I get these, and it's going to be a cup of coffee or one of these gourmet sodas. Just what are they? They're bottled like beer, and they're just like anyway. Yeah, and they're like, it's like a $5 bottle of goddamn soda. And I'll go out to the lake and I'll have a $10 cigar and a $5 soda, and it's all good. And then knock out 3 or 4 of these things, and I'll go, Jesus Christ, this is an expensive habit. But again, this is something that like Christina said, I earned to be here. I earned the ability to waste $45-50 a day on some stupid shit like this. So don't let it get in your way.
You didn't give it up all, like you weren't perfect on the road to get here.
Are you kidding me?
I don't ever want it to be perceived that way, that we are, as a show, where you're at now, it wasn't perfection to get there.
Oh my God. Let's be totally honest. I'll be totally honest. My first addiction was sugar. My second addiction was painkillers. And I dealt with addiction I've beat addiction many times. And that's part of, in terms of my habit stack. A lot of my problem solving came from managing my own shit, as you guys know. Yeah, it was definitely not a straight path to get here. And I dealt with a lot of hurdles, but keep in mind, those challenges and those addictions actually were some of the best things that ever happened to me, because I got to earn my way to a better version of me by beating those challenges.
We're talking relatability here on the Morning Loop, Mornings Live with Keith and Friends. We're gonna come back and revisit this topic on Morning Loop Reloaded in about 45 minutes from now. We're talking relatability. We look at folks, we think that we put them on these big pillars, these big statues, and you realize, they put their pants on the same way I do. So we're going to come back to that conversation in about less than an hour from now. But right now, we got this. And then we're coming back with Robbie Britton. Or Brighton? Is it Rich? Is it Britton or Brighton?
Britain, like the country.
Like the country. Or Marty, how do you say it? London?
London.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we're back in a minute, guys. Go for your break. All right. Come back with Robbie Britton. Right now, we got the accountability check-in. I got something for you guys. What do elite athletes and top leaders have in common? You know what it is? It's endurance. You don't hit your biggest, most audacious goals in one massive move. Not at all. Nope. You do it with daily action, showing up daily. Endurance means showing up when it's uncomfortable, taking the extra minutes to reflect and calibrate, making the tough calls when there are easier options. And I'm telling you right now, it's never going to be a straight line. No, fuck no. Endurance is messy, big time messy. It's full of setbacks, full of doubt, full of self-doubt. So whether you're running a business, leveling up personally, or leading a team, success takes time. The only hack, I'm telling you right now, is daily effort. The question isn't if you'll succeed. It's if you're going to keep going no matter what. Because you win by outlasting, not outworking. And that's what you're seeing here every single day on Mornings in the Lab with Keith and Friends. Oh, yeah. Fuck yeah. We're going to outlast every single one of you motherfuckers starting a YouTube channel right now. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Mornings in the Lab with Keith and Friends. That's your accountability check in every single day around this time. Coming back with Robbie Britton. Let's bring him into the lab and let's get to know the young man. Robbie, Rich, Chris. Robbie, Rich. Oh, we've got John and Marty coming back here. What's up, Robbie Britton?
Hello. Hoping the audio works right now. That's the main worry at this point.
And I think we have you working there. We got Johnny coming back here. What's shaking, Robbie? Where are you joining us from today? You were joining us from London.
No, I'm from London, but I'm joining you from Italy. So ironically, my name is Britton, but here in Italy they pronounce it Brighton. So I swap it myself. I just want to fit in and not cause any drama.
There you go. So Robbie is let me get my camera feed here. So guys, Marty, Rich, Johnny, Robbie is a professional endurance coach since 2013, specializing in ultra distance running and cycling. He's the author of 1001 Running Tips, the Essential Runner Guide, a must read for anyone serious about running. We're going to get that for John Anderson coming up here. He holds the British 24-hour record, covering an incredible 172 miles in one day. For all my American friends, do the math. 172 miles in one day. He represented Great Britain and North Ireland in a 24-hour race, earning third place at the World and European Championships. He's now part of the management team for British Athletics 24-hour team, sharing his experience and expertise in endurance science. Rich Ingram, coming to you, brother. When you said, hey, I got somebody for the show, and you're like, I got somebody for the show, and you're like, we got to get Robbie on the show. Richie, in a sentence or less, why do we have Robbie Britton on the show today?
This guy represents everything there is about endurance. Like I said, Robbie showed me that video of when he crossed the 24-hour line and just fell over. I don't know. I want to know exactly like how do we train to our minds to get to that point?
Yeah.
And Robbie is the pinnacle of that. I love this guy. We met out in Leadville at the hostel out there and just created a really tight bond. And I remember seeing Rob, I was at like mile 40 and Robbie was like 60 miles, 20 miles ahead of me. And I hadn't even reached the hardest part. And he was coming downhill and I didn't want to get in his race because I correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. I think you were in like 5th or 4th around then.
Six at that point.
6. And he stops and he gives me a hug and he's like, dude is just sheer joy out there crushing it and still takes time for his pals. I'm happy to have you on, Robbie.
That's awesome. So, Jimmy, you're having a problem with my camera right now here. So if you can move my camera for me, that would be awesome. Robbie, so when Richie told you to join the show or asked you to join the show, what got you thinking? No, not what got you thinking. You got yourself here today. You're like, yeah, I want to join the show with these guys. When you hear me talk about 270 some odd miles you ran, is that normal for you? Is that an average day or was that a massive accomplishment for you when you accomplished that, Robbie?
That was a pretty good day. Like in terms of days of my life, it's probably one of the best days. Yeah, no, it's not an average day for sure. It's a day that it brings a lot of joy to me, but also took a lot away. I think every time you run a 24-hour race, which is you're going around in one circle the whole time, it probably takes a couple of years off your life. But like those years at the end that you're not too fussed about rather than the ones that you're living at the moment. So yeah, like it's one of my best days. Yeah, I'm coming up to a wedding anniversary and I'll probably put it on a par, maybe a little bit better. My wife wouldn't mind that, I don't think.
Robbie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but about a month ago, somebody bested you, right?
Yeah. I was going to put it in there. Someone beat my record.
Are you going to go back? Yeah, I figured you were. Okay.
He's just looking after it for me for a while.
There we go. I like that. That's a great perspective.
That's awesome. Johnny, throw something here. I'm trying to get my camera sorted out. So I'm gonna let you guys just go with it here for a quick second here. I got a camera problem here with you guys here. So I'm gonna let you guys keep going with it. I get my camera sorted out here. So bear with me for a second here.
Yeah, Robbie, what you're describing about having this day, like in my career, I've had multiple, I guess you'd say, experiences like you're talking about. Obviously, it's not a 24-hour stint for me. In many cases, it was like a really good set of squats or a really good event where, and for me, in my mind, and in my first book, I actually talk about I call it a portal. It's like all of a sudden as I get really deep into pain, as my brain starts helping me with the natural painkillers to get through it, it's almost like everything quiets down, slows down, and I envision like this little portal, like this little hole in time, and I just dive through it. And when I get in there, I don't want it to end. The pain is gone. It's slow. It feels good. And I always hit like way go beyond my personal best or whatever I'm doing. And I can't wait to get back there. So I guess the question is, when you're talking about your experience of getting into that place, for me, it's like, it's what I live for in terms of my training to get back into that place. Talk about, do you have a place like that? Did that 24 hours give you something along those lines?
Yeah, similar. Like for a 24-hour race, the pain is inevitable. And what you do in that moment of pain or those hours of pain is up to you. And I think I try to frame it in a positive, light. So when it gets to, when you've been running for 12 hours and you've got 12 more hours of running to go, like your legs hurt, you've been running for 12 hours, they're supposed to hurt. Everything hurts at some point. And if you fear that pain coming up, you're like, oh, I'm really worried about it, it's going to slow me down, then it becomes a negative situation for you. Whereas I look at that pain as an opportunity. Like I'm going to try and break a record. If I'm in a race, like a world champs, when it starts getting painful, I look forward to it, because that's the time where anyone can run well when they feel good. But the man or the woman who moves best when they're in that world of pain, or who squats heaviest when actually that moment when every fiber of your body is telling you to quit, that's the opportunity. That's a privilege to get to that point, because most people never can get to that.
Yes. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the ways I look at it is when I push myself and I'm trying to get to that point, all that distance and the pain and the anguish that I've gone through is I don't want to let that go to waste. So I remind myself that, hey, I put myself through X to get here. It makes it easier for me to keep going. It sounds like that's the same for you. Yeah.
I just put a big smile on my face. I don't know if that works with a squat. I don't lift that heavy, as you can probably imagine. But no, I remind myself this is what I've come for. Yes, I love the easy miles. I love seeing a friend on the trail. Like, all of this stuff is brilliant. But the bit that I've signed up for, if I wanted, I could have stuck to 5K. I could have stuck to marathons and stuff like that. But I'm there for the moment where it sucks, like, quite heavily. And I want to be in that bit and be like, you know what, this is why I'm here. This is what I wanted to find my limits. And yeah, I'm somewhere around there. Sometimes you go over them a little bit. But the joy of the ultra stuff is that it's never the end of the story. Like, often you can have, like, just before I'd seen Rich at Leadville, we're coming up the back of Hope Pass and it's hot, and you're going up to, I have to do it in feet, 3,800 meters, which is about 16,000 feet, maybe higher than that. And then,
good night.
I was in a bad place. I thought my race was over. I thought I'd gone too hard. I pop over the top. Suddenly there's a bunch of llamas at a checkpoint, which I also stopped to say hello to on the way up. I mean, yeah, you're a good man, Rich, but those llamas also, they carried all the food for us. So I had to show my love for those.
You got to give them some love.
And then 10 minutes later, I'm having a great time. I've seen a friend who's having a good race. That brings me a lot of joy. It distracts a little bit from the pain in my legs, but the whole descent in other people, we had a little gang of us in our hostel, and I got to see all of those guys. And yeah, one of the guys was right at the back, and he was like Tyler Ogg. He was giving it everything. He was inside the cutoffs by minutes from halfway. And then it just reframes what you're doing, because actually it's not that bad. Like, I'm 20 miles ahead of Rich. What am I complaining about?
You're hanging out with Keith, John, Rich, and Marty here on Mornings in the Lab with Keith and friends here. Coming up at the 8:30 Eastern time hour here. We're going to get the CMartyFit tip coming here in less than a minute. Rich got a question for him. We're hanging out with Robbie Britton. The guy runs 172 miles like there's no business. Richie, question for Robbie before we bring up Marty for the fit tip. Richie.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of people out there that look at you and they say, yeah, you're a professional athlete. This is easy for you. And I think that there's a misconception there, because it's for what you're trying to achieve and what other people may be trying to achieve. It's all relative, right? Like, it's just as difficult. And so I think there's a misconception there. So, and I know that you coach a number of athletes. Do you ever run into that? And how do you manage people at the different levels to get them to reach those goals, to get to the next level?
I think you've got to look at the demands of each event to every individual, like tackling a challenge. So Leadville, for me and you, we can look at it as a 100-mile race that we're both doing, right? But there are different challenges we're both going to face. But the very simple one is the amount of time we're working for. Like, we're both running a 100-mile race, but like, I'm running an 18-hour race. You're aiming to run a 24.5-hour race. You're running a bit more. That's a different challenge. Like, you've got to have a whole extra percent. So it's harder in that regard. Tyler's running a 30-hour race out there, right? So if we were to look at it in the same way, like, even if we were looking at how hard we're working, I can afford to work a little bit harder because I'm working for less time. You've got to work a bit smarter. So straight away, I'd say it's all relative. If you were running a 17-hour race, or I think I was 17:56, you could work as hard as I am in that race, right? If you get your nutrition right, the psychology right, the pacing right, but you're not. You're running a longer race, so you've got to be smarter in that regard. So I think it's just looking not just at like the kind of the snapshot, the 100 miles, the 50 miles, the marathon. Like a marathon for Kelvin Kipton, who's passed away, unfortunately, was just over 2 hours. That's a 2-hour run. If you're running your first marathon, it's taking you 5.5 hours. Yes, you may have worked a little less, little easier in training than Kelvin did. You may have been genetically less gifted and not born in the Rift Valley in Kenya, but you're also going to run for 2.5 amount of hours longer. So it's a different challenge. It's just making sure that whatever challenge you're stepping up to, you appreciate it in your own respect, in your own regard, rather than just taking a snapshot and thinking, well, like Bob did this and this is how long it took him. And the same goes to any kind of walk of life. A challenge is like a task is different for any people. If I go to the supermarket, getting something off the top shelf, it's a lot harder for me than it is for you, Rich, because I'm about a foot shorter. So it's a different challenge.
You're hanging out with Robbie Britton, Keith Millis, Rich Ingram, CMartyFit, John Anderson. We're getting up with the fit tip. Marty's got something for you guys to think about. We're going to come back, deep dive, continue the conversation around endurance as a mindset. Marty, you're up, my brother.
Let's get it. All right, we got the fitness tip for today. All right, we're going to talk about slow reps versus fast reps. What should we be doing in the gym? And it's all dependent on your goals, all right? What are slow reps? This is going to involve 3 to 5 second lowering the eccentric and lifting that would be the concentric, all right? So the longer time under tension, it's going to increase your muscle endurance, what we've been talking about, endurance, muscle endurance, and your hypertrophy. So if you want to build muscle and get bigger chest, bigger arms, bigger legs, slow reps are going to be the way to go, all right? This is going to help you with proper form, and it's going to help you connect better with your muscles, mind-muscle connection. Fast reps, what are these for? We're talking about a 1 to 2 second tempo. This is going to be great for athletes. You're going to activate the fast twitch muscle fibers, all right? This is going to help you generate power and speed. Somebody might be training different for you, but we all have different goals, all right? This is great for building strength and your athletic performance. If you're an athlete or you want to maybe perform an endurance race, if you want to do sprints, high rocks, Spartan race, things of that nature, you're gonna want to do some fast twitch and some fast movements, all right? Which one is better? Like I said earlier, it depends on your goal. So if your goal is muscle growth and maximizing your muscle size, you're going to want to do some slow reps and some time under tension. If you focus on strength, speed, power, athleticism, you're going to want to do some fast twitch and some faster reps, all right? Balance both styles in your routine. If you train for a little bit of both, slow reps build the foundation with muscle size and endurance, while fast reps help you unlock explosive power. They both have their place in a well-rounded fitness program. Like I said, you should do both, and that's the fitness tip for today.
About the day with CMartyFit, Christopher Martin, every single day here on Mornings in the Lab, bringing in the rest of our crew here today. Rich Ingram, John Anderson, and Robbie Britton here joining us. Let me get them on the camera there. Man, I'm just having some camera problems here today, nation. You can help me out there, Mark. That's great. Thank you, Jimmy. All right. Okay, let's get at it. Listen, I'm going to go right to the opposite side of things here. Robbie, a recent survey found that 48% of athletes believe mental training is overrated, and that success as endurance sports depends primarily on physical ability. And the skeptical athlete says, mental training doesn't work for me. To hell with it. I don't need mental. It's all about being in the gym. Robbie, address that stat, that source of Runner's World 2022. Almost 50% of athletes believe mental training is overrated. Robbie.
Maybe 50% of athletes don't feel like they need it. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not mentally strong themselves already. If you're coming from a place of strength, you might see less value in working on your mental strategies, your mental techniques. If you're struggling, depends what you're struggling with in a race or in an event. Like if you're struggling, the mental barrier can be a big one for a lot of athletes. And we hear about it in the first breaking of the running of the mile, like people lifting like certain amounts that they've never gone before and then breaking through to a certain, like a higher level. The mind can definitely be a barrier. I personally don't think it's a massive barrier for me. It's something that I see as a strength. Would I say that, so I might answer in that survey that I don't need to do a huge amount of mental training, but I find that a lot of people do it naturally anyway. And it's not necessarily just within sport, but they use mental skills like coping techniques throughout life that then make them stronger for their racing and for their sport. But if you find that like when you've got a difficult task at home, you've got mental techniques that you use to get you through it, that's training you for the sport you're doing anyway. So I would disagree, just because I think it varies for everyone. But equally, a lot of people are stronger mentally than they think they are, and they might not be noticing that like it is a weakness. So they haven't got to work on it.
Yeah, Richie, comment on that. So 50% think it's not important, 50% do think it's important. Where does it fall into your world of being successful in endurance athletics? The power of the mind, Richie Ingram.
The power of the mind obviously is very important, but specifically gearing towards training it. I think just by going out and doing what you do, you're inevitably training it indirectly. You're just not. So let's say I'm going out and I'm doing a tempo run or whatever it is. I'm going to hit a point where like, okay, I still have 30 more minutes to go and I'm fucking hurting. Okay, this is fucking growth. Like I got this. And so every time that I'm doing that, I am training my brain. I'm just not sticking aside 30 minutes a day to do it. Now, on the flip side of that, I do love to meditate. I love the journal. And I think those things help, but I don't know if they are a direct correlation to how my performance is physically, right? I think they just help me, my emotional stability throughout the day. So I think, man, you just keep showing up and fucking crushing it. You are training your brain to get better.
It's habits, Johnny.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's no question that having the showing up and doing the work is definitely a big part of training the brain. Part of what I do is when I mentor people, athletes, all the above, whether it's, I guess to a certain extent, some of the business people that I mentor there, it's a sport for them too, because it's a competition. Yes. But anyway, what I'm getting at is this, is that most people that are successful, they've got some mental strength, but they've never had, or I shouldn't say never, many people have never had some sort of formal, intentional training to actually take what they've already got and really make it potent to the point where you can just turn and look at a target and go, bam. And you can take this mental development, this mental grooming, and you can put it wherever you want to when you understand how to have a better, I guess you say better control, but more importantly, to think that for someone to say, oh, I've got this, that's to say that you can't grow, which is pretty silly. Successful people will never say that. They're like, okay, there's a better way to do this. I want to learn. And that's what I would say to the mental training, is that for the people, the 50% that they don't know what they don't know. But then for the people that do know, they're also the people saying, I want to do better. I want to learn more. So I think that this mental side is massive. For me personally, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I God knows where I would be, but I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Marty.
Yeah, man. You got to train your mental. I'm not sure how people expect to be successful without training their mental. And let's look at some examples. Let's look at Michael Jordan. Back in the 80s, before he even won the championship, he was getting his ass kicked in the East. So he calls Tim Grover, hey, I got to get stronger. Him getting in the weight room, putting that work in, that's training his mental. They weren't lifting weights like that back then. So that was new. That was something different. Same with Kobe. Right? Yeah. Maybe his mental training was a little different. He came straight from high school and was sitting on the bench, coming in shooting air balls. So he had to get in extra work, extra shots, build his confidence. And it might be different in business. Maybe it is going to the gym for you, but whatever that is, whether that's reading, whether that's hiring a mentor, whatever it is, you got to do something to train your mental, because the most successful people don't get to those household name levels without training their mental. So it only makes sense.
Yeah. Robbie?
Can I flip that on its head as well? And there's a really good academic in Italy called Professor Samuel Macora, and they did a test where they had people doing like a 10K endurance test. And beforehand, one group were doing 90 minutes of mentally draining activity. One group was relaxing for the 90 minutes beforehand. And they showed there was a direct performance correlation between the group that had done the 90 minutes of mentally fatiguing task. They performed at a lower level, like in an endurance setting. So if we know that like mental tasks fatigue us, even if they're not related to the activity, yes, then surely we know that if the mental side of it plays a part within the endurance activity itself, let alone beforehand, and that can be the hours beforehand, the days beforehand. If you're in a high stress environment, it impacts your performance across the board, be that from like live sport, whatever you're doing. But I think it's very clear to me that if it can have that direct impact, then yeah, of course it's something that we could benefit from training.
Yeah, we're talking mind games with Robbie Britton, Rich Ingram, John Anderson, and CMartyFit. I'm your host, Keith Millis, here Mornings in Live with Keith and Friends. How to train your mind for endurance. Gentlemen, let's talk about the idea of visualization. I'm a huge fan of visualization. I'm a huge fan of intentionally training my mind to think of how things have happened. In business, I've talked with Tina about this before. In business, I like to hold meetings as if something's already happened. In other words, okay, guys, it's October 2nd, 2025. What have we accomplished in the last month? By changing verbiage, you change your mindset. To me, that's like visualization. I talk to my son all the time playing hockey. Imagine what it's like going in the corner. Imagine what it's like a shift after shift. So when you go out there, it just happens naturally. Robbie and Rich, looking at you two boys. Talk about the power of visualization when you're about to go on a 24-hour run, 18-hour run. Are you thinking about hour 20 and how fucking tough it's going to be and what you need to do in your head to get to hour 24? Talk about visualization, Robbie Britton.
So I look at visualization in two different elements of it. So I like positive visualization and negative visualization is another technique I might use. And I might not use this in the week or the 2 weeks before a race. A bit earlier, a bit further down the line, I'm going to go through I'm going to visualize stuff going wrong, right? And I'm going to mentally start to cope and find ways to deal with it. So that when if it does happen in the race, I've already gone through this scenario, already gone through several different scenarios. So I'm mentally and potentially physically prepared for some of the potential scenarios that are going to upset me on the day. Then the closer it gets to the race, all those visualizations become positive. And it's about preparing yourself, not only physically, but emotionally, because running over the course of a longer amount of time can be quite an emotional endeavor. And if you're getting to that point and you're letting your emotions overwhelm you, so you go from like 5th to 6th, or you suddenly start realizing you're going to achieve this long time goal, your emotions can become overwhelming. And if you've been through this, you've practiced it, you've visualized it beforehand, it's less likely to derail you when it comes to that key moment in the event itself.
Yeah. Richie.
I don't do a lot of visualization. And I think for me, my whole thing is purpose. So I'm not saying that I don't look at what the end state is 100%. I'm focused on what that goal is. And to get there, same thing as what Robbie was talking about. We learned this in the military, right? We want to look at almost like a choose your own adventure book. Okay, we're at this step. We know that this is a pivotal point in the mission. What can go wrong? What can go right? If it goes down this way, then now we need to go down this rabbit hole and see what can go wrong there, what can go right there. And then, so to me, that's just proper planning, right? So we've done our proper planning. We know things are going to get fucking shitty. Okay, what are you going to do when you're at this point when it's the witching hour at 3 o'clock in the morning, which Robbie normally finishes these races while it's still light outside. I'm more of finishing in the dark. So when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're fucking tired and your body is just like basically on a fucking trip, what are you going to do at that point? And so that's where the purpose for me comes in. But I'm not thinking about that point, like how I'm going to feel. The emotion, you have to take emotion out of it. So when I'm planning or I'm at mile 20 and I'm sucking, like, okay, if I'm feeling this terrible now, what am I going to feel like myself? No, I don't fucking do that. It's like we cross that bridge when we get there, because all we're doing is just giving ourselves undue anxiety, and that's just pointless.
Yeah.
So that's how I go about it.
Yeah. All right, we're hanging out with Rich, Keith, Johnny and Marty, and Robbie Britton talking endurance in the deep dive segment here on Mornings in the Lab. Now we're going to take a break. We're going to go into the lifestyle tip, and then we're going to come back and get into a conversation with Jory Jensen on the protein break. We're going to talk protein, endurance, different kinds of protein, and so forth to keep us fueled. And then we're going to come back with Morning Loop Reloaded, and then we'll get into the gym with John and Marty and so forth. But hey, it's time to... Yep, Johnny, you got something for us to consider today, pal?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's go. All right. The lifestyle tip for today. It's going to sound confusing when I say it, so just hear me out. Don't let a good tragedy go to waste. And what I mean by that is this. Life is always presenting challenges, or you could say problems, again, tragedies, right? The tragedies, the problems, they're actually opportunities. They're actually an opportunity for you to get better, because once you get through that problem and you get to the other side of that problem, which ultimately is a challenge, there's a better version of you waiting on the other side. So when something happens and you get hit, sometimes it's like, for me, I feel like somebody dumped a cold bucket of water over my head. And I'm like, oh man, my heart's pounding. My stomach feels all goofy. That is power. That is energy. You are willing to do at that time what you're not willing to do when you're comfortable. That right there is an opportunity for you to get better. So when the world or life whatever you want to call it, society plops something nasty in your lap. Don't run from it. Run to it. Never, ever let a good tragedy go to waste. Rock and roll.
There you go. That's something to think about today with John Anderson. Never let a good tragedy go to waste. Use it as an opportunity to improve. All right, coming back here with, I'm going to bring everybody up on stage here. Rich, Robbie, bring Marty up here. We're going to bring Jory Jansen up on stage as well. And we're going to get into the protein break part of our show here. We're talking food, talking nutrition. And Jory, we'll get you up here on the vertical here. Jory, I see you on the horizontal feed. Jory, if you can get your on the vertical, that would be awesome. I saw you there, but now I don't see you there. So we'll get you up here. And there you are. There's Jory here this morning. Good morning, Jory. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Good. I'm glad to have you here today. Thanks for joining us here this morning. As you can see, we got Robbie Britton here today. Jory, the guy runs 172 miles like it's like we're going for lunch. I'm going to go around 172 miles today. So when we're talking to a guy like Robbie Britton, Rich Ingram, these guys that get up and train for endurance, and we're talking nutrition, we're talking protein, and we got about 10 minutes today to lean into this. I know I've talked with John Anderson about training for endurance without fuel like carbohydrates. So there's many different ways to get here. But let's talk for the next 10 minutes about the power of protein with endurance, and what we as athletes want to be thinking about, Jory Jansen, when it comes to fuel and fueling ourselves for endurance athletics. And then Robbie and Rich, you guys got questions for Jory as well. Let's use this opportunity to hang out with Jory and talk about this. So Jory, talk about the power of protein and nutrition for our endurance athletes and that endurance mindset. Jory.
Yes, protein. I know a lot of people think that it's just for the bodybuilders, but more and more research shows that it's not. It's actually for everybody, but it's your why for taking it and for how much, when. And I think it's really important to understand that for endurance athletes, carbohydrate, definitely an important fuel source, but protein is what helps builds and repairs. So you need to get that in. It gives you that longer lasting form of energy as well.
And Johnny, I see you nodding there. I've talked a little bit, and I know you're a massive fan of protein, obviously, and we talk limited carbohydrates. But Jory made a comment there. I said more and more research is suggesting that there's a lot of value in protein and fats to fuel the body. Johnny, talk about how you train, how you teach folks the power of protein to achieve goals.
A protein is always going to be a staple. Excuse me. It's going to be like the foundation, because just like Jory said, it's you go without and you're going to have trouble. And so then from there, we know that macro has got to be there. Then obviously having a really good available version of it is helpful as well. And then from there, you got to figure out how everybody's body's different. Some people really do well with lots of carbohydrates. Some people don't. I had a guy, he's a swimmer. He's done multiple, he's training to just be the first man ever to swim the English Channel. And we did a whole bunch of tests on him. He performs so much better carbohydrate free as with coconut oil being his primary energy source. It's not even comparable. We lined up the numbers. We did many tests. So what I'm getting at is that everybody's different. So he's going to swim the English Channel, and he hasn't had carbohydrate in a couple of years. So I guess what I'm getting at is that there is no formula. One thing that I do want to totally get behind Jory with is the fact that protein has to be a part of the equation, because if you don't have protein in the equation, your body's going to have a hell of a time rebuilding muscle and recovering. And if you don't give it protein, guess what? It's going to go get its own protein, which is your muscle tissue.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think that when you're looking at endurance and the fuel sources, the substrate that you need, ultra endurance sport is going to need more than just carbohydrate. You're going to need long lasting fuel at some point, or you're not going to make it. Whereas if you're going for a morning jog, it's not that critical for the amount of time. Of course, you need the protein throughout the day. And the amount, quality, those are all important. And the sources can vary depending on how you choose to fuel your body and nourish it. But if you're ultra endurance, you're going to need a variety of sources of energy, not solely carbohydrate, even though that is a great quick source of energy for most people. But at some point during ultra endurance, it's not going to cut it.
Yeah, I got to be honest, Jory, and I'm going to speak for the normal man out here who's just getting up and getting rolling. We have been taught so much about carb fueling, carb loading, and I'm hearing you guys speak about, that's great, but you really need to eat that protein. That because we think of protein built muscle, but what you're saying, Jory, as much as anything, is that yes, you need the muscle, but it's going to build longevity into you as well. Richie and Robbie, as you guys are fueling yourselves, when you're looking at your plate, are you loading up on the rice and the pastas, or are you as much jumping into the steaks and the proteins like Jory and John are talking? Rich, Robbie.
I'm going to defer to Robbie. You take this one.
Rich knows I'm going to come up and upset things now. So, like for me, and there's a few good examples here you can look at. But for optimum performance in an endurance environment, carbohydrates are still king. There's been some research around athletes using ketosis and working, but what it does is it limits your top end gear. So you might be able to spend a longer time sat in like first gear. I don't drive, so also if the car analogy doesn't work, hopefully it does. But like you get stuck in first gear and you can't respond to spikes, you can't operate at a higher level. But people are finding they're having less GI issues. Okay, so it depends what's stopping you within a longer race. Over the course of my 24-hour record, I averaged just under 100 grams of carbohydrates an hour. There was zero fat, zero protein within that. It was carbohydrate gels, drinks, drink mixes, stuff like that. There's some caffeine. We go back to like 1988. Yanis Kouros, who's a Greek ultramarathon runner, they did a study on him running from Sydney to Melbourne, which is about 500 miles. And for 5 days straight, he averaged 135 grams of carbs an hour on the first day, 90 grams of carbs the whole way through. And we're seeing massive improvements in cycling, in endurance running, because of athletes being able to push the amounts of carbohydrate they can take over the course of their events. That said, if someone is struggling with that amount, if there's satiety issues, there's GI issues, one, I always advise people to slow down a little bit. But two, it might be that over the course of that, you just can't stomach the idea, and I'm saying this both physically and psychologically, of that many gels, of that many Myconites, Sour Patch Kids. You can, like, there's a variety of ways you can get them in, like a bit of jerky, some cheese. It helps you with your flavor fatigue. Your body's going to break it down and use it all the same. It's going to be a slightly more laborious method that it's going to use at that point. If you're in full-blown ketosis for a longer distance race like that, you just limiting you might be able to have a more even performance throughout, and it might even lead to your best performance to date. But for optimum performance, and I often defer to Professor Louise Burke's work with the Supernova studies over in Australia, primarily looking at race walkers, but they're still working at a reasonably high amount of VO2 max. They still found, and Louise, I think she admits herself, she went from pro to like swinging back towards a carbohydrate rich for optimum performance in endurance sports. I lean towards her studies as one of the key ones in showing us that I think we're still even finding the limits of carbohydrate usage with some events, with some of the cyclists now looking at 120, 130 grams of carbohydrate per hour within races like the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia. So I've gone against the party line there.
Well, and I want to jump in real quick and say I completely agree that it's with ketosis is not a high performance state. It's what we were doing with my client that's a swimmer in Iceland. We were basically finding a fuel source that was long burning, that was burning fast enough to keep him in that peak performance. And that's why coconut oil breaks down quickly for him, kept him in that state. So I totally agree. Removing carbohydrate to reach a state of ketosis, that is by no means going to put you in a performance state. It might give you some kind of lower level stability, but if you're looking to break records, I would never ever recommend you get yourself into ketosis and try to do it with anything endurance.
Yeah. Jory, when you're hearing this conversation happening right now and people come to you and say, hey, I need some help. I need some help eating. I want to go run a marathon. I want to go and do something with an endurance mindset involved. And I want to go and express my body for a long period of time. Are you naturally just rolling into, I use word traditional makeups, which is okay, Keith, eat your carbohydrates, eat your proteins, eat your fats, or are you taking the time to really understand what my goals are and then prescribing what I should be fueling to reach my goals? Or are we sitting back and being very generic, Jory?
You need to personalize. If you don't personalize, it's just a textbook message. And I agree that carbohydrate is still king in terms of long-term performance. And it's the combination and types of carbohydrates. Just like you train your mind, you train your physical body, you train your gut.
Not this kind of carbohydrate? Not this kind of carbohydrate, Jory?
And that won't be straight up carbs either, right?
That could work though.
So, but at some time, and I liked what Robbie said, I've had this coin for a long time. You can go through long periods of time with something and then you get flavor fatigue. And when you reach the flavor fatigue, then you've got a choice of, I don't need this. When you do need something versus getting in what you need. So I think it's important to have a variety of options always on hand. And excuse me, always trial a combination. So if you're having about 120 grams of carbohydrate, you probably want a few different sources, a couple of different sources coming in, because they will digest a little bit differently and then reach the way to break down. And then you've got that fuel available to you. It's all about energy availability for when you need it. So it's performance on demand. So there's a lot of factors. You're going to personalize carbohydrate intake. You're going to personalize your hydration. Some of that in terms of what makes up the hydration intake as well. You're going to personalize when the protein and fats come in, because they are not quick fuel sources. They take longer. They're not as efficient for quick energy. So if you were going to do something like a higher fat, that might help with training and adaptive training phases. But when it comes to performance on demand, for energy to be available, carbohydrate is still really important. Protein, I look at more as to build and repair, keeps you feeling fuller longer throughout the day. So part of the training program, but it's not everything. So you really want to look at the individual, the timing, the what, and the how much, I think is really important. So personalization is really important.
Yeah, we're hanging out with Keith, Jory, John, Marty, Robbie, and Rich Ingram here. Mornings Live with Keith and Friends. We're wrapping up our protein break segment with Jory Jansen, our nutritionist here in the Business Athlete Performance Lab. Jory, you know what I love and hate about this whole thing at the same time? And I've talked with this with the team here. You really need to enjoy the process, because if you don't enjoy the process, it's going to frustrate the hell out of you. Right. And John talks about testing, and I know, Jory, you do with your clients, and Robbie and Rich, it's okay. This week, I'm going to eat 100 grams of carbs every single day and then go to my stuff. And the next week, I'm going to do 50 grams of this. If a human being can't enjoy that process, you're just going to frustrate the hell out of yourself. And I know I think I can speak for the average dude here who has always been searching for the black and white answer, but there actually isn't a black and white answer. It is an answer of process. It is an answer of talking to guys like Rob, talking to guys like Rich, talking to somebody like Jory and John, and figuring stuff out. Do you want to count macros? Do you want to just eat protein? Do you want to have carbohydrates? And that's what I love and hate about this. And I'm looking at you, Jory, to wrap up our segment. And it must drive you perhaps nuts, but also get a lot of joy when people come to you saying, Jory, can I get the magic bullet? And you're like, no, there is no magic bullet, Keith.
The magic bullet is figuring you out.
Yes.
So that's the magic bullet. So what's going to work really well for you may not work really well for someone else. And when you're beginning your journey, I always say everything's an experiment. So you can't do something wrong. It was an experiment. And did that work for you?
That's good. Yes.
And I think that when you look at elite level, those elite level athletes, you're not normal humans. It's just different. It's cool, but totally different. And so if you're looking at someone who's going to run their first half marathon, the fueling strategy, the nutrition strategy is a little bit different. Let's not count and micro compartment everything. Let's start with something. Whereas when you have the elite level, that's completely different. You've been training for years and years. What works, what doesn't work, who the big time researchers are. If you're going to go for protein, you're looking at Tipton and Stu Phillips. And if you're looking for overall sport nutrition, Louise Burke is amazing, especially endurance sport. So the research is all out there. Look at where you're at, where are you going to start? And even when I work with elite level athletes, pro athletes, I'm teaching them the same thing as I'm teaching someone who's a 16-year-old hockey player. It's get back to the foundation. Where are you at? What have you experienced? What works, what doesn't work? And let's start with one thing to move you to the next level to get you to where you want to be. So it's personalization always.
Awesome. We're hanging out with Jory, Keith, Christina, Marty, Rich, and Robbie. What's great about this, Jory, is that you didn't know coming into this conversation today that we really started the show about relatability and continue to make ourselves relatable to our audience, because we look at elite athletes, Jory. We look at these elite people and we don't think they put their pants on the same way as all of us. So when you're saying you're looking at Robbie Britton, he's running 172 miles, Keith, you're probably not going to be eating the same as Robbie. So let's sit down and figure out your process. Let's learn what's going to work well for you instead of just saying, hey, do what Robbie does. So, Jory, thanks for hanging out with us this morning on Mornings in the Lab with Keith and Friends with our regular segment on the protein break. We got Jory here Monday, Wednesday, Friday Nation. We got a full-fledged performance dietitian, nutritionist joining the lab to bring your questions, answer questions, and give us the knowledge we all need to hit our big, audacious goals. Jory, one last comment from you before we say goodbye. Give us a nugget to hang on to do with this theme of performance, protein, and endurance today before we say goodbye. Jory Jansen.
All right, I don't know if I have any pearls of wisdom other than what everyone is unique. If we over macro everything, it's just going to mess with your head. Let's not do that. Let's figure out what's really important for you. What is the outcome that you want, and what the process is to reach that outcome? And everyone is uniquely different in that way, but yet everyone's similar. We all need fuel. We all need each other to support. And so I would just say, start to look at what is it that you need? Where are you starting at? And just go from there and find the right support network. That's always important.
Awesome. All right, Jory Jansen's joining us here in the lab. She's back on Friday. The protein break every single day around 7:45 Central Time, 8:45 Eastern Time. Oh, Nation, listen to this. That sounds like it's a sound effect to introduce our friend. Christina,
let's go, Coach Flinner.
Let's go, Christina. Come on.
See you later, Jory. Robbie and Rich.
Bye, Jory.
Thank you, Jory.
Thank you, Jory.
Let's get it. So listen, you don't need to be in the top 1% to build your brand. For 16 years, I've built the personal brands for the top 1%. NBA All-Stars, philanthropists, VCs, founders. I helped them to share their stories, build fans and communities. But when it came to building my own brand, I'll be honest, I was terrified. It felt really gross. It felt egotistical. And honestly, it was really fucking scary because to me, I wasn't the top 1%. I wasn't even close. And building a personal brand online, it seems simple. You sell shit, you write content, you prove you're awesome. But it really went against everything that I had been taught in my entire life. Things like do what you love and money will come. Writers are the ones that need degrees. They're the journalists. Anyone else isn't a writer. And put your head down, do the work, and shut up. Opportunities will come to you. So I resisted and I thought it wasn't for me, but then I looked closer and what I saw was people that were succeeding who didn't quite fit the mold, who didn't quite fit that idea that really didn't resonate with me. They were selling, yes, but it was educational. They were writing, but they didn't have fancy degrees. And they were providing and proving value, not with hype, but with actual impact and with actual meat behind it. And to me, that's when it really clicked. I don't need to be in the top 1% to bring value. And neither do you. You have the skills, you have the expertise, you have the perspectives, and somebody out there really needs those. You don't have to be the best. You just need to be you. So if you're holding back because you don't feel worthy, I get it because I've been there. I'm still there. I still fight it. But let this be your sign. Somebody needs what you have. And to them, you are the top 1%. It's really that simple. I have entered my no fucks era. And I promise you, if you take today's brand bite and implement it, you will too. You got this.
Brand bite every single day at the top of the hour. It's where we give you guys, as you're starting out the next phase in your life, you're thinking, I need a personal brand. Yeah, you do. Get rid of the resume, get rid of the CV, come hang with us and build that brand that will get you to that next stage in your life. But at this point, we do this. Yep, bring it on, my friends. I know Johnny loves this part. I know Good Time loves this part. We all dance, Robbie. Yes, we dance. It's the Highlands. Woohoo! Robbie's, what the hell am I in right now? Like, what am I doing? Yes. All right, the Morning Loop. Reloaded. Mornings in the Lab with Keith and friends. We're into our second hour here. We're talking endurance, mindset, mind games, how to train your mind for endurance. If you missed the first hour, I invite you to go back. I also remind you guys, if you got kids in the room, you got kids in the car, you might want to just put some headset on. You might want to turn them down. You might want to listen to us later. We might drop some inappropriate language along the way. That's what we do here in the lab from time to time. But we started the show, guys. We started the show talking about relatability. And we started talking about how sometimes we look at other people, we look at athletes, we look at folks, and we don't know if we relate to them. And then today we learned that super strongman, super bodybuilder, super athlete John Anderson likes to enjoy his cigars. And I talk about my enjoyment for cannabis and so forth. So we're continuing to find conversations around relatability. And Richie had something he wanted to share before we ended the last segment. So Mr. Ingram, my friend, yes, I'm looking at you, brother, but we were talking about relatability on the first Morning Loop, and you said, yeah, I got something I want to share that I maybe haven't shared. So Ingram, what are you putting on the table today, brother?
So I'll share two things. So one, segue from the protein break. I love pizza. I probably eat, and Robbie can tell you this. When we're in Leadville, There's this place, man. What was it? Rocky Mountain Pies, High Mountain Pies. I had a fucking large pizza and a Mediterranean salad like every day. And look, you want to get your fats in there, just take some fucking olive oil and just dribble it on there and now every day. And so I know as far as protein goes, I don't eat a lot of protein, so I get it from the jug, man. That's just how I do it. I supplement it. So that's one. The other one is I dip Copenhagen, and I fucking love it. And I don't want to quit. I don't want to quit.
Unapologetic, baby.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either.
And now I will say this.
Best. I love it.
Robbie doesn't know this because I wasn't dipping in Leadville, because when I was training this summer in Austin, the temperature in Austin, Texas is like 110 degrees. Well, nicotine plays a role in your body's thermal regulation. And so I noticed that I was getting more overheated than I normally otherwise would have. So literally I woke up one morning and I realized this, and I was like, all right, fuck it, I quit. And so I quit for 2 months just through Leadville. And after I got done with Leadville, I got back home. I was like, all right, let me get a fucking dip.
Those that Richard, those that don't know, when you say dipping nicotine, what do you
Copenhagen.
Yeah, what are you doing there, Richie?
Copenhagen long cut, man. I get the 10, I put that shit in my lip, and I fucking suck it down. And whenever I'm
here.
Yeah.
And I'll put it like right here.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm telling you, we talk about getting into flow states.
Yes.
I can, all of a sudden it's 2 hours later. I'm like, how long have I had this fucking dip in? I get focused, man. And I'm not going to lie and say I don't use it as a crutch. I'm sure I do at this point, but I just fucking.
Nothing wrong with that, baby. Nothing wrong with that.
I appreciate you sharing that. And that's the whole point of this, man. The fact that you just said, I like it. Because listen, man, you live a pretty disciplined life. You do your things. You're like, yeah, I don't mind sticking the Copenhagen in my mouth. And the fact that we've given you this safe form to do that, I get a lot of joy to this. I see Christina's face. She's like, really? Oh my God, actually? So Robbie, what's that, Christina?
I've been there. I've been there, Christina. I've been there. My older brother, he was one up from me. He basically one day had this big pouch of beech nut, and it smelled good. I'm like, what's that? He's like, you want some of this? I'm like, yeah, I want some of that. I remember a fat little boy. I thought it was candy. So he gives me a wad, and I put it, and I'm chewing on it. He goes, yeah, chew on it for a little while, and then once it gets nice and juicy, tuck it over to the side of your mouth. Well, by the time it was nice and juicy, I'd swallowed probably 4 or 5 times.
Oh.
And he's about 10 minutes later, he goes, hey, by the way, don't swallow. And he knew what he was doing.
Oh,
I was teaching you a lesson.
I was fucking he just was having fun with me. He wasn't trying to stop me. He just wanted to, dude. I remember it was like we lived on a farm at that point. I remember going to the mechanical barn. It was this floor of cement floor, and it was laid on. Took my shirt off, laid my back on there. It was cool, and I was like sick for hours. It was tough.
I can relate to that, Johnny. So my family had farm in Saskatchewan, my grandparents and everything, and my GG and my grandparents, my uncles, they all chewed snuff, as we called it. And I remember the same situation, Henderson, which was like, hey Keith, you want to try this? Yeah, sure. So I put that shit in my lip, tucked it under my lip, and Richie, fuck man, did I get sick.
Oh man,
I get sick after that experience, and I'll never forget it, and I've never done it again. I was like, that was the grossest thing in my life.
Well, and I think the snuff, Rich, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think the snuff is the finely ground shit.
Oh, I don't do that stuff.
Yeah, that's the stuff right there, man. It goes all over in your goddamn mouth. Because I had experience with that too.
You spit that out and you show up at an event and it looks like you ate a melted chocolate bar all over you.
Yeah, nasty. And it's so fine, as potent as a mother. He got me with that one too.
Oh. I think the biggest thing though is it affecting my performance in some way? Yeah, probably. Is pizza, if I cut that out, would that make me a much better athlete? Yep, maybe. But not to the level. I could look at so many other things that are affecting my performance. I'm not at Robbie's level. I'm fine-tuning minutia, right? So I enjoy these things. I enjoy where I'm at. I'm happy with where I'm at, and I'm going to keep fucking working hard. Now, again, during the summer when I noticed that there was a noticeable difference in my thermal regulation, my performance, I'll just fucking quit. But you just take that with a grain of salt. I think you just got to be smart about what you're doing and what your goals are. Marty,
I know yesterday you made yourself relatable to Business Athlete Nation because you're like, yeah, I'm going for a fucking brunch every now and then. I'm hitting the brunch table every few Sundays. Marty, here's your chance for Vice Wednesday, sharing vices with Nation. Brighton, I'm coming to you next, brother. But is there anything you want to reveal to the world? Like, all right, these guys are saying this shit. I'm saying this right now. Besides the fact you like to go hit up the old brunches every now and then, Marty.
I wouldn't say anything specific, man, but I indulge in a couple things. I master my domain. No, I'm playing. I'm just playing.
Of course you master. We all master our domain.
That's not what I was going to say, but no. That's not advice. No.
Anybody who says they don't master the domain is lying. And I know I'm not calling you a liar, brother. No, I'm saying anybody out there who doesn't have the nuts to admit they jerk off, you look yourself in the mirror and have some stones and be honest.
No, if I'm at an event, I'll have a drink if I'm out with my friends.
Yeah.
I love pizza. Every now and then I'll hit I'll get some ice cream with a Cold Stone spot like that. I'm not going to Crumble Cookie though. That's the one place I won't go to. That's 800 calories in a cookie. It's crazy.
Yes,
but I don't do that.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then every now and then I like sitting down watching shows or sports or something. I just sit down and be not a lazy bum, but I just sit down and enjoy myself, man. That's probably the extent of it. I don't have something like dip though. I'm not dipping anything.
But hey, Marty, real quick, I bet when you do that couch time, you basically earned it. You did your shit.
Yes.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
It's not like you're laying there going, God, I need to get up and do this and that. He's for everybody listening. He earns that couch time.
Absolutely. I wake up before John Anderson.
There we go. There we go. That's it.
I gotta be honest. When I was in the gym this morning doing my thing and doing my cardio. I was thinking, what we're going to talk about the morning loop, and I was like, relatability. And then I sent the note to Anderson, and this has turned into a great segment because Christina, it just continues to work. Like I'm really where we are working hard, Nation, to make ourselves continue to be relatable to you guys. And you start hearing what Johnny does and Marty does, and Christina and myself. But Robbie, listening to all this, and you are an elite endurance athlete. Like, are you just sitting back there? Pardon me, but. Are you just sitting back there judging all of us? You're like, you fuckers, man. You guys are doing this. You're doing this. I'm not doing any of that. Robbie, what's your vice, brother?
I'm judging you, of course, because your vice is...
Oh, you walking around with those sugar candies. I
Yeah.
know.
Oh, wow.
Hear me out, Rich. I'm judging you because your vices are not vice enough for me. They're soft. What is this?
We're pussies. We're pussies over here. Come on, man. Whip out some real shit.
What's going on here? Rich. I like pizza. I live in Italy, right? So the only reason I wasn't joining you for your giant pizzas in Colorado is because they were offensive pizzas to a man who lives in Italy, right? I'm eating pizzas at least a couple of times a week because, like Marty, with his time on the sofa, I'm earning it out on the trails, on the streets. I love candy for the American, and that's probably my biggest vice. If I smiled now, you'd see this. I know.
What's your favorite candy, brother? What's the number one pick?
I had a discussion. Hayden Hawks, one of my American athletes, was with his family recently, and I had to rank my top 10 candy with his son. That was his for 3 days. US candy, I like the Sour Patch Kids, but I think they're pretty good. Yeah,
those are good.
Sugary, the Myconites are good. The Nerds, I like Nerds and stuff like that. But anything. I'll eat this in a race as well. So my favorite is in Scandinavia. They do it well. The snuff they're good at. Apparently, I don't partake. But their candy is world class. So yeah, Scandinavian candy is probably my biggest vice.
Anybody tuning in right now to Mornings in the Lab with Keith and Friends, you're talking with a bunch of 12-year-olds. We're talking Mike and Ike's, and we're talking candy here in the lab this morning. All the great candies to get you through life. But hey, we're going to continue our chat. We're going to pivot our conversation to a segment we call In the Gym with John and Marty. And today, boys, I think we're going to toss in Rich and Robbie into the gym with you guys. That's my thought.
Let's go.
We're going to throw Rich and Robbie into the gym with John and Marty, and let's cut them loose, talk about training for endurance. And Richie, Robbie, I'm sure there's questions you guys got for Johnny or Marty. I'm sure Richie and Marty and Johnny got questions for Rich and Robbie. But Rich, Robbie, we throw John and Marty into the gym. And as you guys know, John's lifted a few things in his life. Marty's trained a few clients in his life. So I thought, hey, there's not a place in the planet you're going to get a guy who's one of the world's strongest men. You're not going to get a guy who's one of the world's greatest trainers in the same room at the same time to get unfiltered 10, 12 minutes of conversation. So right now we're going to do In the Gym with John and Marty. Keith and Christina are going to get off here, and let's do a segment on endurance in the gym with John and Marty, and we'll come back here in about 10 minutes to continue the show. All right, guys, how does that sound?
Sounds
perfect.
good.
Let's do it. All right, let's do that. So we're going to get out of here. I'm going to get off the stage here, and you guys are going to rock and roll. Christina, let's get out of here. You guys are at it. Go.
I got to lead off with a question for these guys because we got some high level endurance athletes here. So when it comes down to in training, the training that I do, I'm not running 100 miles, obviously. But one of the things that I've always had to watch for, weightlifting obviously has been my core. But even with weightlifting, which is short bursts, I always had to be really careful not to basically, when I say overtrain, I'm talking the muscles. I'm talking my central nervous system and my adrenal system. So that's got to play a massive part in you guys, because I know when I've crossed over that barrier and I cook my CNS and my adrenals, man, it's everything is difficult. Like when I go to pick something up, I'm like, oh man, I really went over the line. So I imagine with those long races, you probably deal with you probably burn through the CNS and the adrenals during those races. But how do you keep yourself from doing it in the lead up in the training before you get there?
Happy to jump on that one.
Yeah, go for it.
A lot of it is respecting the recovery and respecting, similar as you might like in the gym, respecting the time between those higher stress situations. Be that like the time between races, the time between harder workouts, the time between the intervals and stuff like that. So like for me, even now this week, I'm having to take a bit more time off than I usually would, because I've rushed back after Leadville. I've had a bit, I can feel that something's not quite right. And it's just listening to my body and respecting that. There are metrics of stuff that you might measure. You might look at your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability, and use these on a day-to-day basis. But nothing beats just kind of going on, if you're honest with yourself on how you're feeling. And if stuff is feeling laboured, if it feels like your motivation's dipping, then I might then look beyond what my usual training metrics might be and say, hey, I need to chill out a little bit.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say too. I'm a slave to the data. I know that I need to work on that, because this morning I'm supposed to do an indoor bike and my bike just took a shit. And I'm like, I guess I could fucking ride it dead, because I could, but then I wouldn't be able to get the data from it. And I'm like, man, goddamn, I'll just go to the gym at noon or whatever at lunchtime. But for me, I just started noticing after Leadville, my HRV is back over 100, right? My resting heart rate is back in the high 30s, low 40s. And for me, again, Robbie's completely different, but I'm getting back into where a 9-minute mile is in a 130 heart rate. Like that's where I want to be. So now I know, okay, working with my coach, we can pick back up the speed work. We can, like I've gotten back into the gym, we can do more explosive things, heavier weights in the gym, because these numbers are showing that I'm getting back to a sense of normalcy. And then we can manage to like what Robbie says, we use RPE, or perceived effort. And so judgment comes into it too, right? I don't 100% relying on the numbers, but that is not always going to be exactly how you feel. That takes us very impactful.
Yeah.
I got a question for all three of y'all. All right. So we got the two endurance athletes, and we got the muscle man, Mr. strongest man in North America, formerly known. Rich and Robbie, what do you do as far as your strength training? Because you do have to have some level of strength for these races. And John, what do you do for your endurance? How do you train your heart? So whoever wants to go first. Robbie, you go first. What do you do for, because you said something like you lift light weights. So just take us through your routine. Let us know what you do to prepare yourself for your events.
So it's going to depend on the time of year. The time of year, like right now, coming towards the end of the season, like in the winter time, I might be doing some slightly heavier lifting. Like we've got like a Olympic barbell and stuff, but our weights max out 140 kilograms, which I don't even know it in pounds, but it's
308.
Yes, it's not. That's the most we have available.
Damn.
Right? It's probably bicep curls for John there. But so we've got a gym set up. There's going to be a load of compound lifts that might come into later in the season, but during the season, most of the stuff I do is body weight stuff, some lighter weights, a lot of mobility, some more plyometrics, some explosive stuff. But it's single leg work, kind of bringing the balance and the strength together. And for the most part, there's a little bit most days, and then maybe two, 3 sessions where I've got a gym that we've built with us, like where we're based in Italy, and I'm using that a couple of times for a more dedicated session. But most of the time, it's even the endurance training itself has elements of strength in there. There's 8 to 10 second sprints up a hill. That's working on my power, my explosiveness.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it's doing some lifts. That comes into training, depends on the time of year. And then like we run up and down a lot of hills here. So again, like my eccentric loading mostly comes running down a hill. But even that, I might add in at the end of a session some 8, 10, 20 second harder workout within a run going downhill, just for that loading specifically. So it varies, and the weights. My dad was a power lifter, so he'd be embarrassed by the amount of weights we have in our gym.
Yeah.
Understood.
So I'll jump in the middle here because obviously my endurance is not the same type of endurance. Mine is more muscle endurance as a whole. So like when I was in my strength career, I needed to have, my muscles needed to have massive endurance. So I would do stuff like, I would take 405 on a squat bar and I would just squat as many times as I could. And in those days I was doing it in the mid 40s. So you doing 45, 46 reps at 405, man, you're in there for a couple of minutes. And it's an intense, because your body will adapt. So that muscle endurance grows really aggressively if you're aggressive about putting the muscle in a spot where it's forced to have more endurance. So I would do different. Keep in mind, this is a set where I take it out of the rack. I'm not inside the cage. I'm outside, and there's no intention of putting it away. It's when I'm done, it's dropping to the floor because I'll go until I can't stand up. So I used to do it with 405. I would do it with 495, which is 5 plates. I would do it with all the way up to 700 pounds. So I basically have 4 plates, 5 plates, 6 plates, 7 plates that I do this with. And of course, the muscle endurance got shorter and shorter as the weight went up. But that was how I made sure that my muscles had the endurance that was needed. Now, when I went to wrestling, all of a sudden now that I'm in the ring for 8, 12 minutes, this is a different type of endurance, but muscle endurance still has to be there because I'm lifting 370-pound guys over my head. I was the strong man, so I had to do some, strength feats in there, but I was already tired and huffing and puffing after 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes in there. So then I switched to power clean. And what I would do with that is I would just, I pick 100 kilos and I would just do one set and do as many as I could. I did actually 101 reps without taking a break with 100 kilos, which is 220. And Jesus. Yeah, but keep in mind, it's because I needed to have that was a combo of endurance, muscle endurance, and just overall endurance. So I was always finding ways to create the endurance I needed within the scope of what I was doing in terms of where my career was.
Man, that's crazy. I did 365 yesterday. I thought I did something, but I got some work to do. Thank you, Johnny. Go ahead, Rich.
Similar to Robbie, right? The only difference is I have to be in the South. I just moved from New Orleans to Austin. I have to be careful about when I'm doing my speed work, just because heat, man, it makes a difference, dude. When it's 100-something degrees and 80% humidity, your dew point is 75. That is just miserable fucking conditions. And that's where I just have to be careful on when I'm choosing my races. But I will say, for the folks that are listening, man, because once you get the fucking itch, it's hard to stop, right? Like you start getting addicted to this, it's hard to stop. And so one of the mistakes that I made was I kept signing up for races. And so I knew, because a lot of ultras and they're in mountainous terrain. And I was living in New Orleans with negative 15 feet of elevation. And so what was happening was I was not properly trained. So I was just showing up and going through just a fucking slog fest to get through these races, instead of taking the time off to say, okay, I need to get in the gym, condition properly with a little bit more running, sacrifice that next race. And then what happens is once you get closer into the season, the races or the lifting kind of goes down and the running ramps up, just like Robbie was saying. But that's what I've done. Like I'm lifting, when I say fucking heavy, man, I'm not like, Jesus Christ. I had T-ball last night and I could barely walk because I had a leg day yesterday and I was lifting like 150 something in the squat rack. Just talking about 500 pounds.
Well, it's all relative though. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like I'll be not running a lot, but I'm picking it back up. So I'll probably be a little over 40 something miles this week. In the gym a few times, riding the bike a couple times this week. So it's relative. It's just working on your goals.
Yes, sir.
Hey, you're in the gym with Keith, John, CMartyFit, and our friend Robbie Britton here today, hanging out with Mornings in the Lab, the In the Gym segment, wrapping it up here every single day, 9:15 Eastern time. Only place on the planet you're going to get these guys telling you or educating you on the stuff that you're not finding anywhere else. We're talking endurance in the gym. And I was sitting in the green room there. I was texting Marty, John, and I was listening to your numbers, and I was like, holy fuck, man. And I said to Marty, I'm like, this dude's a beast. And then Marty said, yeah, I did 365 yesterday. And I can see the disappointment on Marty's face. He's like, yesterday, he's like, yeah, I'm the man. And then you're like, oh, I'm the man compared to my buddy John over here, but but that's what's fun, right? Because it's all relatable, right? It's just because John could do 500 doesn't mean that somebody has to do 500. It's just showing up and doing it. And Rich talks about the stuff that Robbie does and so forth. But what a great conversation, you guys. What an exceptional conversation, frankly. But hey, I can't believe we're working towards the last segment of the show. And let's bring Flynn up on stage here. I think her power's back. Yeah. I got a text from Christina as well saying, yeah, my power's out. So we got Christina back on the show here. And we're going to work towards wrapping it up here now. So we're going to say goodbye to Rob. We're going to say goodbye to Richie. Unless Richie wants to stick around for the community corner. Johnny's making his way out. Marty's making his way out. And then Keith and Christina are going to be back here in 12 minutes here to do the business and branding segment. But let's go around the table. The show today, guys. Who wants to start? Tina, what did you take from today's show before we say goodbye to our friends here? What did you take from today's show, Christina Flynn?
There's no one way to do it. There's
Yes.
only your way. And the goal has to be figuring out what are the ways that work for you. The idea that Jory talked about with experimentation, I thought was awesome. We do that as entrepreneurs as well. You have a thesis, you have a goal, and then you're going to do little experiments across an X period of time to be able to see if you can validate or invalidate that. And I think putting that kind of mentality towards your fitness, your nutrition is also a really great way to approach it.
Yeah. Richie, what did you take from today's show, brother?
That vices are okay until they affect your performance negatively. Then you need to do something about it, but they're okay. We're normal. We're human.
Yeah, that's well said, pal. I could not have said it any better. Marty, what'd you take about, what about you, pal?
Yeah, man, I like the different perspectives. Robbie had his perspective. Rich had his. John had his. We talked about visualization. We talked about mental training, and everyone's approach is different, but we all got the same goal, which is to win.
Yes.
Right. So it's not, there isn't one right way, and that's what makes winning beautiful. So
Yes.
That's pretty much what I got from the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny, what'd you take from today's show, brother?
I'm always about making sure that we keep things simple enough for our viewers to have some good takeaways. And I felt with a lot of really complex information, we had some stripped down moments where people could have some firm takeaways. I mean, and for me, that's what this show's all about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree with you. And our guest, Robbie, what did you hung out with us today for the last hour and a half. I'm very grateful for that. And clearly we can have you back for more conversations. I want to keep leaning into your experiences and the adventures you're going to be going on. But Robbie, what did you take from today's show, my friend?
I mean, I learned what dip in Copenhagen means. I did. The biceps the size of John's are mesmerizing, and it's difficult to not be distracted by them. But maybe I'm going to start. I'm going to.
There we go, baby. Put it up.
Dude, my nub is bigger than that.
Yeah. That's a button right there. My nub is bigger than that. That's a button.
That is it.
Mosquito bites.
That's
No,
it.
I'm playing.
Robbie, you're good though? You had a good time today?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It's very high energy. I'm going to go for a nap.
Yes. Listen, we're really grateful that you're able to spend some time with us, and I hope you'll come back, man. We're doing a lot of great things here on the show here. Richie's hanging out with us more and more. We're doing, like I said, we got a massive platform we're building, and to take a page out of John Anderson's book, we started this little airplane and we've been building it, and this airplane keeps flying. And right now you are probably attaching yourselves to this rocket ship that's starting to take off here. So grateful to have you on the show here with us. Marty is heading out. John's heading out. Richie, you going to stick around for the community corner, or are you hanging out? Are you taking off?
No, I got to bounce out. Got to go make some money.
Yeah, the crew's rolling out. Robbie's out, Richie's out, Marty's out, Johnny's out. We'll see you guys later. Flinner and I are going to hang out to do the community corner, and we're going to be back to do business and branding. Guys, you guys have a good one, and we're going to keep hanging out with Flinner. Robbie's out, Richie's out, Johnny's out, and Marty's out, and Flynn, you and I are left.
And there were two.
All right, so the last segment of the show here with Keith and Christina. Mornings Alive with Keith and Friends. What a great show today with John and Marty and Robbie and so forth. And Jory Jansen joined us. But now we're going to talk community corner. Jimmy, we're going to get going with our segment here around celebrating human beings here. And today we're going to spend some time on the LinkedIn platform celebrating somebody who, actually, Christina, you put this person on my desk yesterday, and then I noticed they were changed yesterday. So it looks like we're coming back to this person. But this guy is the head of content at Kickstarter. I got a funny Kickstarter story. So there's a period of my life, Christina, where I had a Kickstarter habit. Talk about relatability. I had a Kickstarter habit.
Okay.
Yes. So it would not be uncommon for me, Tina, where I would be on Kickstarter and I would just find cool things and I would order them.
Oh, I had that habit too.
And then it wouldn't be uncommon where I'd be in a meeting with my team, and then months, sometimes actually one happened 2 years later. I was sitting in a meeting and all of a sudden FedEx showed up and I'm like, oh, what's this? And people are like, oh, what did you order? I'm like, fuck, I haven't ordered anything forever. And it shows up and I'm like, oh, what's this? I was like, oh, I ordered this from Kickstarter 2 years ago. The funny thing is,
And
it was
actually went
like the
into
iPhone
production.
7 and it was already on the iPhone 9 at the time. I was like, oh, this thing's not going to work. It was funny how I had the Kickstarter habit. You did too.
I did. I bought a number of different things to which my wife was like, we just have a Kickstarter graveyard of all of these things that you bought. But I
Right?
mean, it shows the power of the platform to be like, that's such a great idea. When it comes down to production of these things, though, as we know as entrepreneurs, oh man, it's one thing to sell an idea, it's another thing to actually produce it.
Yes. So this gentleman is the head of content at Kickstarter. He leads content strategy for the crowdfunding platform, supporting and educating creators. Oh, he's on the Forbes 30 under 30. Wow. Recognized for his achievements in marketing and content strategy. I want to try. I did the 40 under 40 thing. I was already at the next stage of my life, but dude, to be on the 30 under 30, that's pretty exceptional. He's a creatorpreneur and a speaker. He has shared his experience at events like AdWorld and partnered with brands like LinkedIn, Hootsuite, and Notion. He's got former roles at top brands, previously led content teams at Songfinch and Squarespace, and worked in social strategy at Ralph Lauren. So today, Christina Flynn, we are going to celebrate this fellow who is all the way from, it looks like Brooklyn, United States, New York City. Today, Mornings in the Lab, the Creator Spotlight is, and I'm going to pull it up here. Jimmy, just hang tight with me here. I got to do this. No, wrong screen there. Yeah, this one there. Present, share screen. And we're going to do today's Mornings in the Lab Creator Spotlight. It is, man, I'm just having challenges here today. Brandon Smithrick. Yeah, there you go. So he's the head of content at Kickstarter, Forbes 30 under 30, creatorpreneur. I haven't heard that one before. Speaker, strategist, Squarespace, and Ralph Lauren. Christina Flynn, why are we highlighting Brandon today?
I've been following Brandon for quite a while, and I just really love his content. I think he's a great example of somebody who is leveraging this opportunity he has with a high-profile role at a high-profile brand in Kickstarter to be able to build his own personal brand. So he's a great model of possibility for people that if you have that moment and you have a big brand behind you that you're working for, leverage it. Use that to your advantage. I love this idea that he's focused on being a creatorpreneur because I do think that is a market that we haven't seen a lot of people really know how to define. And I think that is the next step of creator, of saying, it's one thing to build my brand, it's one thing to create content, it's another thing to commercialize that and monetize that and be an entrepreneur within that. And I think he does a great job talking about that and talking about his experiences with it. He lifts and he supports other creators, which who doesn't love that? And ultimately, I think what he's doing with his time with Kickstarter, creators have a lot of great ideas. And we're not always the best at monetizing our work. He's showing you, if you have these great ideas, we have this platform for you to be able to potentially monetize them, to be able to potentially sell it to a much larger audience and get some distribution. So he's doing some really cool things with some really awesome creators. And I just respect a lot of what he's doing. He's got good content.
Yeah. Brandon Smithrick, Forbes Under 30 Summit. Dude, I'm proud of you, man. Good accomplishments. Great work. I'm checking out your profile. I had a look at it last night when Christina sent it over, and I think you're doing some exceptional stuff, my friend. And listen, we want to have you here in the lab, Brandon. Come back and come and talk to us. Come share some of the stuff. And Christina, I just want to talk Kickstarter. I would love to have Brandon just talk Kickstarter and talk about the business and talk about content. So I think if anything, Brandon, we'd love to have you here. We'd love to talk Kickstarter. We can make topics up around Kickstarter. And
I want to talk about how creators and entrepreneurs can use Kickstarter for their ideas. And
yes,
I don't know if there's a lot of Kickstarters. I've seen a lot of it focused around the product side of it and the productization of ideas. But I'm not sure if there's an opportunity there for services and services-based businesses. But I'd love to hear more about it from Brendan for sure.
You know what? Maybe this could be the first morning show on the Kickstarter platform for Brandon Smithrick. Maybe there's a demand for.
All right, quick selling. We'd love to have you, Brandon. We're just celebrating you. That's it. No ulterior motive. We love what you're doing, and we respect and appreciate it.
That's it. Brandon. We love celebrating creators every single day here, Mornings in the Lab. We take our community corner. It happens at 9:30 Eastern time. We take the big old Mornings in the Lab spotlight, the big light, and we shine it on somebody and celebrate the great work that you're doing on the platform. So, Brandon, we'd love to have you here and hang out with us on the show. All right, Christina, we're going to move our attention to branding and business, the segment where I go to this camera here in front of me. That's the sitting camera. And we're going to talk today about my notes here. We're going to talk today about the power of personal branding and business growth. We started this new segment on Monday. We're now on Wednesday. Monday, we did an introductory of what the segment's all about. We spent a little bit of time getting to know you. Yesterday, we spent a little bit of time getting to know me. And today, we're going to continue to lean into the importance of authenticity and personal branding. So, Christina, I'm going to move you to the center camera here, and I'm going to reposition myself to the bottom camera here. And so let's get the dialogue going. What do you think?
Take it.
Let's do it. All right. So you set it up for us, and I'm going to do this here. Boom, boom, and let's rock and roll there, my friend.
I think we hear the word authenticity a lot, and some might argue that it's overused.
Yeah.
It's like resilience. These are big words with big concepts behind them that when they're overused, it takes away the meaning that they have. So let's not think about the word authenticity. Let's think about what does that word represent? And that word represents you,
Yes.
the essence of you, who you are, what you're about. And this stat is not surprising by any means, but 86% of consumers say that authenticity is a key factor when deciding which brands to support. What does that mean, though? When you think about authenticity in brands that you're supporting, people that you're supporting, Keith, in your own experience, talk to me a little bit about authenticity in that sense, and why do you think that's so critical for people?
It's interesting, Christina, because in many ways, does it not bring it back to the conversation today around relatability and being real? Right.
Yeah,
like, and
totally.
I've said to you since I've met John that every single day, because I'm the same age as John. Like he's a couple months older than I am. So we grew up
both born in the 1930s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So same era. He's 2 months older than I am, but we're in the same peer group. And John would have been one of the guys that I would have quote unquote looked up to and would not have related to. Oh, how come he's a big bodybuilder? How he's achieved those big things? And we tend to idolize people. But the more I continue to get to know John and his personal brand, Christina, and I was thinking about this morning, and I want to be appropriate how I say this, but I'm fully falling in love with his authenticity, like his unapologetic self. And I'll tell you right now, it's giving me the confidence to do the same. That to me is the power of authenticity and a personal brand. I don't think people are as authentic as they say they are. I think most people put that on as a term, as a front. And that's why I found so much power in today's segment. Rich Ingram coming out and saying, yeah, you know what? I chew snuff. I chew chewing tobacco. Right? People don't talk about that, right? All of a sudden, there's somebody listening to the show going, oh, okay, you know what? I like this guy. Maybe I want to work with him. So that to me is what it's about, Christina. It's about finding a connection point that makes you real to me as a human. Does that make sense to you?
It totally does. And I think a lot of people, when we think about authenticity, we've talked about this, when we think about sharing our story, it oftentimes comes back to the hard parts, the very difficult things that we've been through, the ability to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is another one of those words that can be overused.
Yes.
Really, it just means being real and being yourself. Now, I'll say this, it's hard to be authentic.
Yes.
In today's society, because sometimes when you're authentically you, and a lot of folks like myself, growing up neurodiverse, growing up with mental health issues, I'm a quirky motherfucker. I'm real quirky. And sometimes when I was authentically myself and I was that quirky person, it wasn't accepted and it wasn't okay. And it was like, would you just stop? And so I retreated. And I realized that there was a lot of spaces, typically when I was outside of the confines of my own family and my own home, that it wasn't really safe emotionally to be myself. And so now we're coming out and we're telling people, you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. And I'm like, but I just spent my entire career in an environment where you actually tried to pull all of that out of me. You told me not to do all those things. You told me I had to dress a certain way, I had to act a certain way, I had to look a certain way. So talk to me about your experience with that. That's a real struggle for a lot of people, especially a little bit later in their career. You told me one thing my entire career, and now you're telling me to switch it up. What the fuck do you want me to do?
It's interesting to say it because I don't know if I've experienced that. And what I mean by that is I've No, because that comes across as suggesting that I've never been in awkward situations. I've perhaps embraced my quirkiness. I've embraced my eccentricities. I've had to learn how to do that. I've had to learn to look in my own mirror and recognize that I like who I am, but it's taken me time and it's taken me age. And
I was going to say, if I may, you and I have shared a lot about this.
Yes.
You talked to me about growing up in small town Winnipeg.
Yes.
Where hockey was life.
Yes.
CMO is life. You are creative, but you only recently started resonating with that word creator.
Yes.
Because it wasn't really something that you felt like you could be. You couldn't really dress like yourself, or when you did, it didn't feel like you were accepted. Tell me about that.
Yes. And it leads back in many ways to just my philosophies with remote work and working and so forth. I've always felt like I was the underdog. I always felt like I was the guy that didn't belong. And again, back to my friend John, probably many of those similarities, and which fed a lot of my insecurities. It really wasn't until I started having success with my business back at ICUC where I guess it empowered my confidence to continue being myself. But even still, Christina, during those times when I'd have to go to boardrooms or go to meetings with men that I respected that didn't think that they respected me because of how I dressed or how I maybe brought myself to the table, I struggled with that big time. Yeah, to your point, my authentic self, I had troubles with that during my 30s when I was growing ICUC because I thought I was supposed to be one thing. I'm telling you right now, Christina, it wasn't until the pandemic when I felt like the whole world was even. I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm good at this thing. I'm good at this working from home camera thing. This is my authentic self. What now is my authentic self? Put me into a boardroom with a bunch of suits. Oh my God, I'm an uncomfortable turtle in a shell.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting part because one, you have to know your authentic self.
Yes.
And a lot of us, that has been pushed down or beaten out of us for metaphorically for many years and decades. So it takes time to really discover, fuck, who am I actually? Like I've told you my story. I needed to talk to AI to see outside of myself to get a third party perspective on like, who the fuck am I after all these years? So there's that. You have to know who yourself is. The second part though is being comfortable with that and accepting that person in all facets. And then the other part is really being comfortable showing up as yourself in situations where you might be an outlier. I always say like I am like in the land of misfit toys. Like when I show up to an event and I'm with people that grew up in the same suburb that I did, that lived a very different life than I've lived, I don't really feel comfortable. I don't really have much to contribute because we're so different. It's a totally different thing to show up and say like, here I am, world, fucking take it. I don't care. If you don't like it, screw off.
I think part of the power of building a personal brand, and now you have shared with me this, Christina, is getting to a point, and I'm glad you're working towards this concept of the no fucks era. Because for me, when I fully accepted not caring what anybody else thought, is when magic happened for me and my human, and magic happened for my authentic self. Right, going upstairs, putting my tank top on, coming down and being teased by my friends. I don't give a fuck. Like, yeah, you know, I'm not as big as John, but that's not the point. It's the point of, yeah, I wanted to put this on and have some fun with my friends, right? Or I was going to college back in the days, putting on one red shoe and one black shoe. And at the time I was like, that's cool to me. People would tease me and I would go home and I would stress about it. But now and I think it's part of it's an age thing, Christina, but the moment you can accept this, I don't care what the rest of the world is thinking, like that's a really magical place to be in, because that's when I really believe you can authentically say, like I did a couple of days ago, no, or you can authentically say, yeah, let's get into that. But it all leads with curiosity, I think, and it leads with accepting what you do and don't like about yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's all really complicated too. And I think I'm not at the stage yet where I don't give a fuck about what people think. I give a lot of fucks about what people think. And
let me ask you, but why though? Let's bring it back to personal brand, because why? Because as a brand, I would argue that let's shine a light on that. That's an attribute of your brand instead of being afraid.
And it is. And that's what I talk about.
Yes.
So to me, I'm not at the stage that you're at, and maybe never will be, where
Yes.
I don't give a fuck. And I know a lot of people where that comes naturally to them.
Yes.
Clients that I work with that had that mentality, I bring that out because people want to know, how did you get there? Because that's not the average individual,
Yeah, you're
not
right.
giving a
Yes.
fuck what people think. So I'm
Yes.
like, let's talk about that. Let's educate people on how that got there. How were you raised and how did that inform this personality? Me, I'm not there yet. And I don't know if I'll ever be there.
I've
But
pursued it.
what the
I've pursued it, Christina, but go ahead. Sorry.
exactly, you move forward towards it. And I feel like that I'm the stage before maybe you got to where you are now, which is I give a lot of fucks about what people think, and I'm still doing it. So
Right.
previous
So
though, I wouldn't have done it. I just stayed back because I gave too many fucks.
I pursued it through curiosity and through self-awareness, sitting down with
Mm.
psychologists and sitting down with counselors and sitting down with tuning into my emotional intelligence. And I have found that learning about that, learning about empathy has enabled me not to care what others think, which I think has enabled me to give people the confidence. I believe, anyways, that I've been able to give the confidence to people to move towards this feeling of relinquishing why caring about anybody else. I'm not making myself clear, but I think what I've learned with myself and what I put out there to others is that it's okay to fall on your face and get up and try again. Because I have fucking fallen on my face 1,000 times. I've spent lots of money at therapists. I've spent lots of money in my own head. I've spent lots of time trying to figure myself out. And I'm okay with sharing that. And every single day I hang out with John and Marty and yourself, I feel like I get even more comfortable sharing my authentic self, because I know there's people, like you said, listening to us right now, wanting to get here, but don't know how. I'll tell you how. You just got to fall down and get up again, right? And then recognize that, okay, oh, Christina does care about me falling down and picking myself up, and she's going to prop me up, right? It's not easy, Christina. You're absolutely right. It's not easy at all doing that.
It's very hard. I just want to acknowledge Cosmic Vision in the comments here. About to hit up the ground running. Well done. Great to see
Awesome.
you.
Yes.
Every single day you're showing up, and we know I got a good time in the comments. He finds a bunch of different people. But so I want to look at this from a different perspective before
Sure.
we wrap up here, Keith. And there's a lot of people. So only 39%, there's a stat here from Harvard Business Review. Only 39% of business leaders believe being authentic is actually necessary to long-term success. This was a stat from 2020. I suspect that's probably a little bit different now, but is this all bullshit? Like, you used to tell us one thing and now you're telling us another thing. Does it actually matter? I think there's a lot of people we all know that are really not authentically themselves that have done quite well. So why is it so important?
I don't know if it's as important today, Christina, as it is setting the stage for tomorrow. That's what I believe, right? We are living in a world now where more fake content, more questionable content is being distributed around us. And it's hard to delineate what's real, what's not real, what's authentic, what's not authentic. So I think we're moving through an era right now as society figures this out with technology and AI, and talking to whether it's a real human or an AI bot to have conversations with. I just think that me as a leader, you as a leader, I think we're just going to see the rise of authentic humans. And I know that sounds so cliche and sounds so ridiculous when I say it out loud, but it sounds ridiculous because we haven't lived in a time before we've been able to have this conversation.
Like,
Which
is fucked up.
Well, no, it is
because that's the funny part of the conversation.
It is because I sit back every day and I talk to my advanced mode GPT like I'm talking to you right now. And there's nothing real about it. We put the notebook LLM on, and there's no humans that are part of that. So, to answer your question, I think we're going through a generational shift. We are going through a generational shift with leadership. And I think the leaders that are working their ways up the ivory towers that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s now, I think the power of being a real, authentic human to balance out the technology surrounding us, I think is going to be more important than ever. And again, you and I have talked about the power of the resume or the power of the CV. You think about that, right? Those were created in a world where we didn't really use many computers. We used a typewriter to type up our resume. Now an AI can create.
Well, I never did. You're old as fuck.
Yeah, but we live in a world now where an AI can create a CV or a resume in seconds, but then who is really Christina? So that's why I think this power of the personal brand and portraying who you are so that people can relate to you. And one last thing, Christina, that this is where I think there's a positive with social media, because it's allowed us to find others that are like us. And that, I think, is a positive part of social. We spend so much time poo-pooing social, but we live in a world now where we can connect with everybody, which is okay. You know what? I like this morning show because I like the fact that John Anderson does that. Or, hey, Rich is okay to admit that he chews on snuff, or Christina. So that to me is the power of today's social, which is it's connecting people to others, which they may not have found before.
Yeah, and quite frankly, if you're not showing up as yourself, you are going to attract people that are like the person that you're playing versus the person you actually are. And so that becomes this perpetuating idea that now you're surrounding yourself with people that are actually reflective of this persona you've created. But what about, do you think that it actually can hurt you? So do you think that you can go overboard? Do you think that there's a balance? I don't even believe in balance. I believe in blend. But do you think that there's a point at which people are like, okay, we get it. Maybe not all of it. I don't know if that exists on our show, though.
Yeah, but I don't know. So I'll reference two humans, and I know we're working towards wrapping it up here, Christina. I don't know if we have to look any further than Tiger Woods. Many years ago, he went through his experiences with his infidelity situation, and we have to look no further than former President Donald Trump. Like, very authentic human beings as we've learned about them. Has society shunned them? No. Society has continued to accept them. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just stating a fact that I think that there is a lot of value in being your true, authentic self and letting the people find you that care about that and accept that. If there's anything that I've learned as I've grown up, Christina, it's taken me a long time to grow up, is the power of grace, is the power of acceptance, is the power of curiosity, and the power of asking more questions. Right? Because then I don't think you can ever be transparent enough, because then that just makes me want to learn more about you and make me want to lean more into you. And that to me is magic. I really believe that.
Yeah. And I think my head goes to one, those were two men. And of course, this is a show for men. But I do feel like there is, and powerful, affluent, pro athlete. So I do think there's a level of forgiveness that we provide people writ large as a society that are able to have that level of privilege. We grant them acceptances in ways that we don't and wouldn't otherwise. So I think that's a reality. But knowing that this is a show for men, not everyone has permission to be their authentic self in all ways either.
That's a fair point. Let's go there for a quick second then, because you know what? And I'm glad you raised it. I'm just trying to think quickly off the top of my head. We have both experienced females in society that have been not given the same grace as Trump or Woods. Right?
Oh, and if a lot of women, if you fuck up once, you're toast. You ruined your shot.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but let's think of like an actress like Amanda Bynes, or right now Christina Aguilera is getting dragged through the mud because she's managing her body weight, and apparently she's been on Ozempic and so forth, where who cares? Good for her. If that's what's going to help her be comfortable with herself, and that's fine. So you raise a very valid point, Christina. I'm glad you did that. It appears that society is quick to accept perhaps male authenticity. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Maybe we're less to adapt female authenticity because we are still quick to judge. Christina.
Yeah, and I think there's still that we just don't understand one another. So I blend this idea of authenticity. I'm very open about my story. And yet I worked with somebody that was like, you're vulnerable, but you're not really vulnerable. Like, you're not actually getting into it. You're saying all the things that have happened to you, but you're not saying how you feel right now. You're leading this ideal that it's all in the past. Whereas this person intimately knew it wasn't all in the past. I was still struggling with many of these things in this moment. And so I do feel like knowing your authentic self is important. You do not have to share all of that in order to be authentic either. Nobody has the right to parts of your story that you don't want to share. And I believe there's an entitlement that's been developed over time through social media that if you are showing up and you are putting yourself in this position, we deserve to know everything. We deserve to know all of the gory details. And that's not what I tell my clients. You can be authentically you and say, fuck you, you don't deserve to know that. And that's my call and my decision to make. And that's authentically me.
You're hanging out with Keith and Christina here, Mornings in the Lab on the business and branding segment. There's one thing I'll close on this point here, Christina, that I thoroughly enjoyed about today's show from the beginning till the end. And I got to be honest, I didn't even think about it as I was putting our morning loop together. I wonder if we're not using a word enough when we're talking about authenticity and personal branding, Christina. And it's the word of relatability. Because if I'm trying to convince you to buy something from me or to convince you to be a part of my community, in other words, like the business side of things, I'm trying to find a relatable concept, right? And maybe that's what we need to spend more time on as humans when we're building authenticity or building personal brands, leaning into this idea of, oh, so what you're actually saying is you want to be relatable to me. Yeah, I actually enjoy my cigar. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And maybe we don't talk about that enough, Christina, because maybe it's those points within the story that you know what I'm trying to get at. Relatability is
I know what you're trying to say, and I think I agree with it on the premise of it. The one adaptation that I would make is that I'm not trying to convince you of anything.
No.
And I'm not trying to be relatable to you. The idea to me, the definition of authenticity is I don't have to convince you. It's not my responsibility.
No.
If I'm showing up, I'm being myself. I believe that I have value to offer, and I am trying to connect with people and relate to people that I think will benefit from the value that I have to offer, then I'm doing my job. I don't have to convince you of anything. I need to make sure that I'm clear on who I am, so I'm attracting the right people and repelling those that aren't.
The funny thing is that as we wrap up here, you don't need to convince me. You need to look in the mirror and convince yourself. That is the power of the authentic, relatable human. That if you can look in the mirror and convince yourself that you are who you are and you're proud of who you are, you get out there in the world and you don't got to convince anybody because you're like, fuck it, this is me. And I know
there is no greater lesson in life that I have learned. I've been and have had psychiatrists since I was 12 years old. I've learned more about myself, building my personal brand and writing online than all of those years combined. Because it forces you to really take a look inward in a different way. And for me, it was showing up and saying, do you actually think that you're worth anything? Do you actually think you're valuable? Because selling something and trying to convince people versus knowing innately that what you have to offer is valuable are two very different things.
Yes.
So that's also the power of this work. It's not just, yes, build a brand, build an asset, but in doing so, my hope for people is that they build a deep understanding with themselves that they are worthy, their perspectives are worthy, and what they have to offer is really valuable to a certain subset of people. And because of that, connection is really important. So you need to be yourself to attract those folks.
There you go. All right, you're talking branding and business with Keith Millis and my friend, producer Christina. We're hanging out here. We're closing up the segment here, guys. Listen, if you're looking to build a personal brand, if you're looking to discover your authentic self, if you're getting up today and you're looking around at your career and you're thinking, geez, I got a resume from the 20s, I got a CV from the 20s, I don't know what the hell this personal brand stuff is, you come knock on our door. Come knock on the Business Athlete Performance Lab door. Come knock on Christina's door. We'll get you set up. We'll get you building that personal brand. Personal brands, I believe, Christina believes, we believe, are going to be necessary to help people move through the next stages of their career in a world of AI-generated content, in a world of many inauthentic, questionable things. Being real is more powerful than ever. Christina, we're done here today. We've rocked and rolled over our 2-hour show. Let's get after it. We're going to get into post-production, and we're back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. Who do we got tomorrow on the show?
With Colby Wegner, and he is talking about his challenges with burning out in entrepreneurship and what he did to overcome those.
Awesome. Today, mind games, how to train your mind for endurance with Keith, Christina, Marty, John, Rich Ingram, and our friend Robbie Britton. Join us from London today. Good Times, Seasonal Humidor, Fit Presenter. We got Cosmic Vision. We got Adam. We got a bunch of people joining us this morning. I appreciate all of you guys. We'll see you guys all tomorrow morning. Mornings in the Lab, 8 o'clock Eastern time, the only place to help you guys achieve your big, audacious goals. And here's the sound effect to walk us out of the studio. See you, Tina.
Later.